Is the game afoot? I believe it is. Sherlock is back with the 6 Thatchers. Now, this is a show I haven't really talked about before, but it is one that I have been watching since it first turned up, and I love it. I've always liked Sherlock Holmes from a young kid, but I'm not a fan of every iteration of Sherlock Holmes. I do really like BBC's Sherlock, though. So here's my chance to do a review of a brand new Sherlock fairly soon after it has aired. Now, I'm going to give you the warning right now. This will not be spoiler-free, because a lot of stuff I really want to talk about, that would all be considered spoilers. So stick around to see my face for the immediate impression, and after that, maybe buzz off and see the thing yourself. Unless you don't care, in which case stick around. So, what did I think about the 6 Thatchers? I think this is the first episode of Sherlock that I can say flat out I don't like. There have been some that I've liked less than others. There even were some that was like, that was okay, I don't need to see that again. Like the Hound of the Baskervilles kind of fell under that category, but I've never come away from an episode going, well, I kind of wish I hadn't seen that. But I did with this for a number of reasons, and they pretty much all center around Watson and Mary. But you know what? We'll get back to that, because I know I'm going to get ranty once I start talking about that. So before I get into full-on rant mode, let's talk about what was nice. Well, Benedict Cumberbatch has not lost a step. He's still great at Sherlock. He's always great at Sherlock. Mark Gatiss as Mycroft, wonderfully slimy as he always is. And there are certain moments that I do absolutely love. Like, for instance, I love when Mary goes through all this trouble, all these random things, you know, to try and avoid Sherlock, and then he's just there and he goes through this whole ramble of how he could figure out what she was going to do. And but that's really hard, so I just put a tracer in the memory stick. That was great, and that was awesome, and so there were moments like that across the episode that were wonderful. But man, okay. So I've got a lot of issues with the whole Watson and Mary thing. Almost everything they did with that, I don't like. Now, part of it has to do with timing. I understand to a certain extent. I don't necessarily agree with, but I do understand the creator's instinct that once they tie down a character to a marriage, if it is a happy marriage, it's going to be harder and harder to excuse their going off and doing these adventures anymore. You get that all the time. It's why these sort of relationships never last in anything that is intended to be ongoing, whether it's Buffy or whether it's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or what, you know, the hookup can happen, but then it's just a matter of time before the writers rip it apart, because they see it as being limiting, and they've done that here, and I really hate it. But here's the thing, even if I set aside the fact that I hate that they were tearing them up and then eventually killed Mary anyways, even if I set aside that, I hate the fact that we're doing this immediately after the previous series where they just got married. Couldn't we have at least one series where they're together and happy and dealing with it before we tear everything apart? You know, give us some weight. Build a relationship that we are going to be sorry gets torn apart. Instead, they tear it apart almost as soon as they put them together in the first place, and that undermines the impact that you could have had doing this, even if I thought it was a good idea in the first place, which I don't. Because if there was ever going to be a character who was like, no, fine, go off and do this, it was going to be Mary. It seemed like she was built for that. Now, I haven't looked into this too deeply, but I do understand that there may be a meta reason why this has happened, which is that Martin Freeman and Amanda Abington, who play John and Mary Watson, are an actual couple in real life, and they're splitting up. So if there was tension between them in the marriage, they may have seen that, and she may have requested to the writers, guys, please write me out so I don't have to keep doing this. And I understand that might be part of the reason we're in this situation in the first place, but it's the end result I still don't like. So while maybe I can understand why it happened, I still don't like it. And all of this even before they killed her, oh boy, I'll get to that moment in a minute. But all the, you know, with John, with that woman on the bus, I was like, oh, come on. Or Mary sort of, you know, drugging Sherlock and doing this runaway thing, which was very close to what went on with her, like in the episode where she and John got married. So I'm going again, like again, immediately. And then with, oh God, the minute that woman pulled the trigger, even before it went into slow motion, I thought to myself, oh, don't. Oh, don't. No, don't. Oh, for the love. And then she jumps in front and did. Oh, God. And I honestly don't even really know how emotional the goodbye between John and Mary was, because I was sitting there the whole time going, for crying out loud, why did you do that? Just overall, I thought they undermined the relationship between them too soon. It had not been well established enough for that to have any true emotional weight. I think killing her off was the cheap and lazy way to go. And it completely undermines what happened at the end of the last series. And honestly, almost everything that happens here undermines what happened at the end of that series, with Sherlock making a vow that he's going to protect them and then immediately blows it. Again, him failing at that vow would have had more weight if he'd been holding on to it for longer than, a couple months. And I understand that in real time, we've had about 2 years. I know it's been a long time for us, but it's been a very short time for them. And normally I'd be okay with the story sort of coming in and, we had left where he had shot that guy, he was coming back, and Moriarty's coming back, and that was obviously our big hook in to this series, and we all came in going, what's going on with that? Normally I'd kind of be okay if they went in going, okay, look, that's going to happen. We're going to set it aside and tell you this story. Normally, I'm okay with that, but I'm not in this case for a couple of reasons. The first is that there were huge, big, massive implications for what went on, and they just kind of go, for a lot of them. And then what is still hanging around, they just, we'll stick a pin in it and come back in it later. And I'm not okay with that when there's only 3 episodes in a series. When you're doing a 24-episode show, or even a 10-episode show, a short season show, that's fine. I will allow you to set the main story aside to tell me individual ones. When you've only got 3, you can't focus on the story you set up for 3 freaking episodes? You gotta drive a wedge between Watson and Sherlock again, just like you did at the start of series 3 after Sherlock came back and died, and it was brilliantly executed then, and now we're gonna get a watered-down version of that with Mary's death. Like, at this point, if I didn't know that Toby Jones was coming in at the villain, I might give up. I mean, I would still watch these things regardless, but I wouldn't have a lot of hope. I do have a lot of hope because I love Toby Jones, and I love him in villain mode, and the little glimpses we've gotten, he can be wonderfully slimy, and I'm hoping that a strong villain will help this thing come back, because this is the worst Sherlock episode, period. This is it. This is just bad. And I never thought I'd say that about this show. That's depressing. That's not a great way to start a new year in my book. So the 6th Thatchers, first episode of Sherlock Series 4. Did you see it? What were your thoughts on it? Whatever they were, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell so you get notifications when I put new stuff up. Follow me on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Check out the Council of Geeks podcast available on iTunes and Stitcher. And until next time, this council is adjourned.